small apartment had turned into a real prison. The young woman had become a hostage not only to her husband's cruelty, but also to his mother, who always found excuses for the violence. Once again locked up after a beating, she heard her mother-in-law's cold voice. "It's your own fault. Don't provoke him." The sound of retreating footsteps meant she had a little time to do something. Good day, dear listeners. I'm happy to welcome you to my channel. Here's a new and engaging story for you. Enjoy listening. Camilla wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand and tightened the last nut on the pipe with a wrench. The basement was damp and cool, but sweat still trickled down her back from the strain. She adjusted the uniform cap of the management company Aquaservice and looked with satisfaction at the result of her work. "There you go, beauty," she muttered, patting the repaired riser. "Now you'll be as good as new." The radio on her belt crackled, interrupting her monologue. "Alvarez, come in. We've got a call on Constitution, 17, apartment 84. Burst pipe in the bathroom, the owner's furious. Can you take it?" Camilla sighed. Her shift was supposed to end in half an hour, but accidents never chose a convenient time. "Copy that. I'm on my way," she replied, packing her tools into a battered toolbox. Climbing out of the basement into the fresh air, Camilla closed her eyes for a moment. The October sun gently warmed her face, though the wind already hinted at the coming winter. She loved her job, even if it wasn't considered women's work. 4 years earlier, when she first applied to the management company, her boss, Bernardo, had peered at the fragile 23-year-old girl over his glasses, unsure whether she was joking or not. "An emergency plumber?" he repeated. "Young lady, are you serious?" Camilla nodded and placed on the table her technical college diploma, where she had graduated with honors in the Department of Installation and Maintenance of Internal Plumbing and Ventilation Systems. Her father, a plumber himself, had taken her to side jobs since childhood, and when it came time to choose a profession, she had no doubts. Bernardo shook his head but hired her. They were critically short of workers. In the 4 years since, Camilla had proved that women's hands could sometimes handle plumbing better than men's. The elderly tenants especially valued her. Polite and neat, she never showed up drunk, never smoked inside, and always cleaned up after herself. The building at Constitution, 17, was relatively new, a 10-story block built in the early 2000s. Camilla took the elevator to the 5th floor and rang the bell of apartment 84. The door swung open abruptly, and a man of about 35 with a flushed, angry face appeared on the threshold. "Finally!" he burst out. "I've been waiting 3 hours. The whole floor is flooded." Camilla calmly ignored his outrage. From experience, she knew people often exaggerated both the wait time and the scale of the problem. "Hello, I'm from Aquaservice. Alvarez Camilla, plumber. Please show me where the leak is," she said evenly, stepping into the apartment. The man hesitated for a second, clearly not expecting to see a young woman instead of a bearded guy with a wrench. "You are the plumber?" he asked in disbelief, looking her up and down. "That's right," Camilla replied matter-of-factly, used to such reactions. "So where's the leak?" "In the bathroom," the owner grumbled, leading her down the hall. The bathroom was indeed in bad shape. The pipe under the sink had burst, and water spread across the tiled floor, seeping into the cracks. Camilla quickly assessed the situation and got to work. She shut off the water, laid out her tools, and began dismantling the connections. "How long will this take?" the man asked impatiently, watching her. "About 30 to 40 minutes, Camilla answered without looking up. "The pipe needs replacing. A clamp won't hold here." The man snorted and leaned against the doorframe, continuing to watch. Camilla felt his gaze, but, as usual, tuned it out, focusing on her work. "My name's Rodrigo," he suddenly said. "Pleased to meet you," Camilla replied politely, unscrewing the old pipe. "And how long have you been working?" "As a plumber, I mean. Don't you get scared. It's men's work, after all." Camilla smiled faintly without lifting her head. "Pipes don't bite, and tools are the same for men and women." Rodrigo unexpectedly laughed. "You're brave and feisty." "Feisty," Camilla agreed. "Pass me a towel, please. I need to wipe the thread." To her surprise, Rodrigo did so without protest and even brought her a lamp for better lighting. As she worked, they chatted. He turned out to be a manager at a large home appliances retail chain and had only bought the apartment a year ago. Finally moved out from my mother's, he said with a strange tone. At 34, it was about time to start living independently. Camilla nodded, tightening the last screw. All done, she announced, wiping her hands on a rag. Try turning on the water, but slowly. Rodrigo cautiously turned the faucet. Water flowed smoothly, with no signs of leakage. Perfect, he sighed with relief. Listen, how about some tea? As a thank you? Camilla wanted to refuse. Her day was over, and at home, a half-finished book and hot bath awaited her. But something in his eyes made her agree. Just for a little while, she warned, and I still need to fill out the work report. They drank tea in the kitchen, discussing the latest city news and complaining about rising utility tariffs. Rodrigo turned out to be a pleasant conversationalist, attentive, with a sense of humor. When Camilla was about to leave, he suddenly asked, "Could I maybe invite you out for coffee sometime? Not as a plumber, but just as a woman." Camilla looked at him in surprise. Usually clients either didn't see her as a woman at all or made crude jokes. Rodrigo, however, looked at her with genuine interest. "You could," she answered unexpectedly, even for herself. "I'm free on the weekend." Their relationship developed quickly. Just 2 weeks after their first date, Rodrigo had already introduced Camilla to his mother, Conchita, a plump woman with a piercing gaze and tightly pressed lips. "So, a plumber?" was the first thing she asked, giving Camilla a scrutinizing look. "And how much do they even pay for such a man's job?" "Enough to live with dignity," Camilla replied calmly. Conchita pursed her lips and turned to her son. "Rodrigo, did you remember to pick up my medicine at the pharmacy? My blood pressure's been spiking since that quarrel with the neighbor." All evening, the mother-in-law systematically ignored Camilla's presence, speaking only to her son and referring to her in passing as "that girlfriend of yours." Camilla didn't take offense. She had long since learned not to take other people's prejudices to heart. After dinner, when she and Rodrigo stepped outside, he smiled apologetically. "Forgive my mom. She just worries about me." Camilla shrugged. "It's nothing. Everyone has their quirks." "She'll come around," Rodrigo said confidently, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You'll see. She'll like you." Camilla smiled, but an inner voice told her that relations with her future mother-in-law would be far from cloudless. The marriage proposal came 3 months later. That evening, Rodrigo invited her to a restaurant, fidgeted nervously, spilled wine, and finally stammering, asked her to be his wife. "I've never met a woman like you," he confessed, squeezing her hand. "You're strong and independent, yet so feminine. I want to wake up next to you every morning." Camilla agreed, though something troubled her. In 3 months, she had already noticed that Rodrigo could be hot-tempered, especially when it came to his mother. But love made her overlook these things. The wedding was modest, only close family and friends. Conchita barely concealed her disapproval of her son's choice, but kept within the bounds of propriety. After the celebration, the newlyweds moved into Rodrigo's apartment, and their honeymoon was spent on the Caribbean coast. It was there, in the gentle waves of the Caribbean Sea, that Rodrigo first showed his true nature. Camilla had spoken with a young waiter on the beach, simply asking about the cafe's hours, and Rodrigo erupted in a jealous scene. "You flirted with him on purpose, right in front of me," he shouted, grabbing her by the elbow. "I saw everything." Camilla was stunned by his reaction. "Rodrigo, what are you talking about? I was just asking about the schedule." "Don't lie to me." He shook her by the shoulders. "I'm not blind." An hour later, he was on his knees apologizing, showering her with roses. Camilla forgave him. After all, jealousy was supposed to be a sign of love, she convinced herself. When they returned home, they began a married life that quickly turned into something very different from what Camilla had dreamed of. The first thing Rodrigo did was demand that she quit her job at the management company. "My wife will not be messing around with other people's toilets," he declared flatly. "It's degrading, for you and for me." "But Rodrigo, I love my job," Camilla tried to object. "And I make good money. I'll provide for the family myself," he cut her off. "A woman should be taking care of the home, not pipes and sewage." Camilla tried to argue, but Rodrigo was adamant. He even called Bernardo and informed him that his wife was resigning. When Camilla found out, she was furious for the first time. "How could you?" she screamed. "You have no right to decide for me." Rodrigo looked at her with such cold anger that Camilla instinctively stepped back. "I'm your husband," he hissed, "and I decide what's best for my family." That evening he struck her for the first time, a light slap, more insulting than painful. Afterward he wept, begged forgiveness, swore it would never happen again. Camilla forgave that outburst too, excusing it as stress from work. But deep down she knew she had made a mistake agreeing to his conditions. Without a job, locked within four walls, she felt her independence and self-confidence melting away. And the constant presence of her mother-in-law, who stopped by several times a week to check on her darling boy, only made things worse. Conchita never missed a chance to point out her daughter-in-law's shortcomings. "You're ironing shirts wrong," she declared, critically inspecting the freshly laundered clothes. "Rodrigo likes it when the collar is crisp." "And what did you make for dinner? More of those salads? The boy needs meat. He's still growing." Camilla clenched her teeth and kept silent, though inside she was boiling with indignation. The boy was 35 years old and perfectly capable of deciding what to eat for dinner. Yet in his mother's presence, Rodrigo turned into another person, submissive and spineless. He agreed with her every word and never once defended his wife. Thus passed the first year of their marriage. Camilla withdrew further and further into herself, becoming a shadow of the confident, cheerful girl who once fixed pipes and teased clients. Now she quietly cooked, cleaned, ironed, and stayed silent whenever Rodrigo raised his voice. And he lashed out more and more often, over soup that was too bland, a shirt left unironed, or socks folded the wrong way. Each outburst came with a torrent of insults and sometimes shoves, hair-pulling, and rough pushes. And after each episode, tears, apologies, and promises that it was the last time. Whenever Conchita witnessed such scenes, she always took her son's side. "You provoke him yourself," she told Camilla. "Men are so sensitive. They must be shielded from stress, and all you do is get on my boy's nerves." Camilla kept silent, but resentment and rage were growing inside her. She knew she had to change something, but didn't know where to start. Fear of the future paralyzed her will. In their third year of marriage, things only got worse. Rodrigo didn't get a promotion, and he began coming home increasingly irritable. Now he didn't just yell, he could hurl a plate at the wall if he found the food unappetizing, or shove Camilla hard enough to knock her down. Twice she packed her things and went to stay with a friend, but he would show up, grovel at her feet, promise to change, and she would return, unable to break the emotional dependency. At such times, Conchita was always there by her son's side, fanning the flames with her remarks. "Of course she doesn't appreciate you," she would say loudly enough for Camilla to hear. "You provided her with an apartment, you give her money, and she can't even make a decent dinner. Not like I could at her age." Camilla began to think about divorce, but fear stopped her. Where would she go? How would she live? 3 years without work had eroded her skills, and her confidence had melted away. Early in their third year, she tried to talk to Rodrigo about going back to work. "I'm going crazy at home," she admitted. "I need to do something besides cleaning and cooking." Rodrigo looked at her as if she were insane. "Back to this again. You want to embarrass me in front of my colleagues so everyone knows my wife messes around in toilets? I'm a professional plumber, not a—" She didn't get to finish. Rodrigo grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her. "You're my wife, and you'll do what I say." That evening he hit her for real for the first time. In the morning, Camila stared at the bruise under her eye for a long time and understood it was time to act. She began secretly setting aside money from what Rodrigo gave her for household expenses and plotting her escape. But she couldn't imagine the resolution would come so soon and so unexpectedly. On that October morning, Camilla woke with a heavy sense of foreboding. Rain was drizzling outside, and the wind flung handfuls of wet leaves against the windows. The day promised to be raw and unpleasant. Rodrigo was already getting ready for work, nervously buttoning his shirt and glancing at the clock. "Why didn't you iron my gray suit?" he snapped. "I asked you yesterday." Camilla flinched, remembering she really had forgotten. She'd had a headache and gone to bed early. "I'm sorry, I forgot," she said softly, getting out of bed. "I'll iron it quickly now." "It's already too late. Rodrigo barked. I've got an important meeting with management, and I'll look like a tramp because of your carelessness. He grabbed the blue suit hanging in the closet and began dressing in agitated motions. I can make you breakfast, Camilla offered, trying to make amends. Don't bother, he cut her off. I don't have time for your culinary experiments. The front door slammed and Camilla was alone. She slowly sank onto the edge of the bed, feeling a lump of despair growing inside. 3 years of this life had drained her emotionally and physically. She barely recognized herself in the mirror. Pale face, lifeless eyes, a tense line to her shoulders as if she were constantly bracing for a blow. The phone jolted her out of her stupor. It was her mother-in-law. Rodrigo says you didn't iron his suit again, Conchita began without a greeting. Today is such an important day for him, and you couldn't even take care of that. Camilla rubbed her forehead wearily. Good morning, Conchita. I didn't know he had an important meeting today. What do you mean you didn't know? He's been talking about it all week. Do you not listen to him at all? Camilla stayed quiet, knowing explanations were pointless. Rodrigo had indeed said something about work, but lately she had learned to tune out his monologues, her only way to keep her sanity. I'll come by today, the mother-in-law continued. I need to check if everything's in order in the apartment. Last time I saw dust on the top shelves. Conchita, And don't you dare argue. My son works his fingers to the bone to support both of you, and you can't even keep basic order. The call ended, and Camilla slowly set the phone down. Something inside her finally cracked. She suddenly understood clearly that she couldn't go on living like this. All day she performed her chores mechanically, but her mind was far away. She remembered who she had once been, confident, independent, with self-respect. Where had it all gone? Why had she allowed herself to be turned into a submissive domestic servant? Around 3 in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. Conchita stood on the threshold with 3 large bags. Help me carry the groceries, she commanded instead of greeting. I bought everything for borscht. Rodrigo loves it, and I'll teach you how to make it properly, since last time you oversalted it. Camilla silently took the bags to the kitchen. The next 2 hours turned into pure torment. Her mother-in-law ordered her around, criticized her every move, and never missed a chance to remind her what an inept housekeeper she was. You're cutting the carrot too large. Rodrigo likes it finely chopped. And why are you adding so much onion? That'll give him heartburn. Camilla followed instructions mechanically, trying to block out the endless stream of criticism. At some point, the older woman was distracted by a phone call, and Camilla managed to catch her breath. Conchita came back to the kitchen looking worried. That was Rodrigo. He's had trouble at work and had a few drinks with colleagues to relieve the stress. A lump of anxiety rose in Camilla's throat. Drunk Rodrigo was far more dangerous than sober. Maybe he should spend the night at a friend's, she suggested cautiously. Her mother-in-law gave her a contemptuous look. Don't be ridiculous. A husband should come home to his wife. Your job is to support him in difficult times, not throw him out of his own home. Camilla wilted, knowing it was useless to argue. She went on cooking, her hands trembling slightly with dread. Rodrigo came home around 8 in the evening. Camilla heard his uneven steps in the hallway and his muttering under his breath. His mother rushed to meet him. Son, what happened? You look so upset. Rodrigo shoved her aside and headed for the kitchen, where Camilla was setting the table. His eyes were bleary, his tie askew, and he reeked of alcohol. Ah, my faithful wife, he drawled with open mockery. Cooking, are we? Trying your best? Camilla nodded silently, trying not to provoke him. I didn't get the promotion, he blurted, dropping heavily into a chair. Can you imagine? 3 years I've worked like a dog, and they chose that upstart Gutierrez instead. He's got less experience than I do. I'm very sorry, Rodrigo, Camilla said softly, setting a bowl of borscht before him. Maybe eat something? You'll feel better. Better? He shoved the bowl away, sloshing soup onto the tablecloth. Nothing will make me feel better. I slave away to support this house, and what do I get in return? You can't even iron a shirt properly. Conchita stepped in, laying a hand on her son's shoulder. Rodrigo, don't get worked up. You know how bad that is for your blood pressure. Eat. I made the borscht myself. I don't want to eat. He slammed his fist on the table. I want, for once in my life, for everything to be the way I want it. For my wife to show respect. For work to value me. Camilla quietly wiped up the spilled soup, feeling fear and helplessness clamp down inside her. She knew any word could trigger his rage, but silence didn't help either. Rodrigo suddenly jumped up, knocking over the chair. You can't even say anything, can you? He shouted. You just sit there like a mute? I break my back for her, and she can't even support me. Rodrigo, Camilla began, but he cut her off. Shut up, he roared and suddenly grabbed the plate of borscht from the table. I don't want to hear your excuses. The plate smashed against the wall. Red splashes of soup spattered the kitchen, staining the white curtains and light tiles. Camilla flinched, instinctively edging back toward the fridge. Rodrigo, calm down, Conchita coaxed, grabbing his arm. She isn't worth your nerves. I'll get you some valerian drops. But Rodrigo was past calming. He shoved his mother aside and moved toward Camilla. You're doing it on purpose, aren't you? He hissed, bearing down on her. You're deliberately provoking me, so I'll snap. Camilla shook her head, backing toward the doorway. No, Rodrigo, you've just had too much to drink. Lie down and rest, and tomorrow we'll talk when you're sober. That was a mistake. Mentioning his drinking was the last straw. Oh, so now I'm a drunk too? He seized her by the shoulders and shoved her hard. You dare lecture me? Camilla lost her balance and fell, smacking her shoulder against a dresser. A sharp pain shot through her arm, and she cried out involuntarily. Stop it! Conchita tried to intervene, but not to defend her daughter-in-law. The neighbors will hear and gossip again. Rodrigo stood over his wife, breathing heavily. For a moment, something like awareness flickered in his eyes, but alcohol and anger quickly snuffed it out. I've had enough! He pulled the apartment keys from his pocket and tossed them to his mother. Lock her in here. I'm not done teaching my wife to show respect. Conchita coolly picked up the key ring, slipped it into her purse, and looked at her daughter-in-law with disdain. It's your own fault. Don't provoke him, she snapped, heading for the door. I'm going to the store for bread and milk. You two sort it out. The door slammed and Camilla heard the key turn. She was left alone with her drunken, aggressive husband. Rodrigo loomed over her, raising his hand to strike. Well then, shall we have a heart-to-heart? He grated. Camilla shut her eyes, bracing for the blow, but instead she heard a strange sound, something between a sob and a hiccup. When she opened her eyes, Rodrigo had slid down the wall to the floor, his face contorted as if he were about to cry. I hate my job, he muttered. I hate that Gutierrez. I hate everything. Carefully, Camilla sat up, rubbing her bruised shoulder. She knew Rodrigo was in that dangerous state where aggression could flip to remorse at any moment, and then flare up again with renewed force. Rodrigo, lie down, she suggested gently. You need to rest. To her surprise, he didn't protest. Drunk and exhausted, he let her lead him to the bedroom and lay him on the bed. Within minutes, he was snoring, knocked out by alcohol and emotion. Camilla went back to the kitchen and sank onto a chair. Her arm throbbed. Shards of broken dishes littered the floor. Borscht was drying on the wall. Worst of all, she was locked in the apartment like in a cage. Her mother-in-law had taken all the keys and she had no spare set. Camilla examined the lock. Maybe she could open it with makeshift tools, but she didn't know how to pick locks, and she didn't have the right instruments anyway. The balcony? They lived on the 5th floor. Climbing down without mountaineering gear was impossible. She was trapped. And what would happen when Rodrigo woke up? He might not remember his outburst and turn into an aggressor again, especially if his mother poured fuel on the fire with her comments. And then it struck Camilla. She was a plumber. Maybe she didn't know how to pick locks, but she knew everything about a building's utilities. Her eyes fell on the radiator, and a plan began to take shape in her mind. If she couldn't get out of the apartment, she could make the apartment itself break down. Then not even her mother-in-law would be able to stop her from leaving. Camilla dashed to the storage closet where the tools were kept. Her old toolbox was still there, the one Rodrigo had contemptuously hurled into a far corner when she quit Aqua Service. Now those tools would be her weapon. She took out an adjustable wrench, pliers, and a screwdriver and got to work. First, she crept into the bathroom and methodically shut off all the radiators, jamming the valves so they couldn't be reopened without a special tool. Then she turned to the cold water tap. Carefully, so as not to cause a flood right away, she loosened the fitting, priming it to give way at the right moment. Her gaze fell on the electrical panel in the hallway. Camilla carefully removed the cover and pulled the fuses, leaving only those that provided minimal lighting. Now when the mother-in-law returned, most appliances wouldn't work. The final touch was the gas stove. Camilla opened and closed the burners to create a noticeable smell of gas, enough to cause alarm, but not so strong as to pose real danger. Once her preparations were complete, she calmly sat in the chair by the window and waited. Outside it was already dark, and the fine rain had turned into a downpour. Conchita was due back in half an hour, and Camilla wanted to meet her fully prepared. She heard the key turn exactly 40 minutes after her mother-in-law had left. At that moment, Camilla gave a sharp tug on a cord she'd attached to the cold water tap. There was a crack, and water gushed from the pipe, flooding the bathroom. Conchita entered the apartment and immediately sensed that something was wrong. The strange smell of gas, the darkness in the hallway, the sound of running water. "What's going on?" she shouted. "Camilla, what have you done?" Camilla walked out to meet her, holding her toolbox and a small bag with essentials. "Good evening, Conchita," she said with a calm that surprised even herself. "You've got a minor emergency. A pipe's burst, the electricity is off for safety, and the heating is better left off until everything dries. And it seems there's a gas leak somewhere." "What have you done?" With a shriek, her mother-in-law lunged for the phone, but it was dead. Camilla had prudently cut the wire. Water already lay 10 centimeters deep on the bathroom floor and was starting to seep into the hallway. The apartment had grown noticeably colder with the heat shut off, and the smell of gas, though not truly dangerous, added drama to the scene. "You're insane!" Conchita screamed. "Rodrigo! Rodrigo! Wake up!" But Rodrigo, dulled by alcohol and emotional exhaustion, merely rolled over and kept snoring. "He won't wake up for another 2 or 3 hours," Camilla said evenly, "and the water's already dripping down to the neighbors. They'll start knocking on your door soon, or call emergency services, or the police." Her mother-in-law was choking with rage. "I'll sue you! This is deliberate property damage!" Camilla smiled, for the first time in a long while, sincerely and without fear. "Nothing of the sort, Conchita. This is an accident that happened while you and your son were holding me in the apartment against my will after he used physical violence on me. By the way, I have photos of the bruises and testimony from friends I've told about the domestic abuse. More than once." Conchita's face twisted with anger and fear at the same time. "Give me the keys," Camilla commanded, holding out her hand. "I'm leaving, and I suggest you call the emergency service before the whole building gets flooded." To her surprise, Conchita meekly took the key ring from her purse and handed it over. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Rodrigo will find you and make you pay for everything." "He won't," Camilla replied calmly. "I'm filing for divorce and leaving the city, and if he tries to pursue me, I'll go to the police. I have all the evidence of his abuse." She took the keys, detached her own copy, and tossed the rest onto the water-covered floor. "Goodbye, Conchita. Tell Rodrigo I'm no longer his property." With that, Camilla walked out of the apartment, feeling her sense of freedom and self-respect return with every step. Behind her, she could hear her mother-in-law's panicked cries as she called the emergency service from her mobile, but Camilla no longer cared. Outside, the rain had already stopped, and stars peeked through the breaks in the clouds. Camilla drew a deep breath of fresh air and headed for the bus stop. She was going to her sisters, who lived in the suburbs and had long urged her to move in. This was the end of one life and the beginning of another. And Camilla knew for certain that she would never again let anyone take away her freedom and self-respect. The emergency plumbers arrived 40 minutes after she left. By then, water had already seeped into the apartment below, ruining a recent renovation and expensive furniture. The downstairs neighbors called the police, accusing Rodrigo and his mother of deliberate vandalism. Rodrigo didn't wake until morning, with a brutal hangover and in a soaked bed. Emergency workers bustled around, neighbors shouted in the hallway, his mother sobbed in the kitchen, and Camilla was nowhere to be found. It took time for him to grasp the scale of the disaster, not only in the apartment, but in his life. Camilla sat on the bus, clutching to her chest the bag of clothes and tools, everything she'd managed to take from her former life. The raw evening had given way to a cold night, and the bus windows fogged with the breath of a few passengers. Despite the uncertainty of the future, she felt unexpectedly light and calm. Getting off at her stop, she stood for a moment beneath the lone street lamp, looking at the quiet street lined with neat private homes. Her sister Christina lived in the last house on the street, a small but cozy cottage she'd bought after her divorce 3 years earlier. Camilla walked slowly down the road, feeling the past recede with each step. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. It was her mother-in-law. She declined the call, then switched the phone off entirely. From now on, all communication with them would be through a lawyer. The gate creaked softly as Camilla entered the yard. The house was lit. Warm light shone through the curtains. She rang the doorbell, and a second later, Christina appeared on the threshold, a petite brunette with a worried face. "Camilla!" She immediately pulled her sister into a hug. "You really did it." "I did," Camilla answered quietly, feeling tears well up. The first of this crazy evening. Christina pulled her inside, helped her out of her wet jacket, and seated her at the kitchen table. A minute later, a cup of hot tea and a plate of sandwiches were in front of Camilla. "Tell me everything," her sister asked gently, sitting down opposite. And Camilla told her. Everything. The years of humiliation, the constant nagging from her mother-in-law, how Rodrigo had slowly turned from an attentive suitor into a domestic tyrant, and her own last desperate act. "I caused a flood," she finished with a nervous laugh. "Can you imagine? I, a professional plumber, broke my own plumbing." Christina shook her head, but there was no judgment in her eyes, only understanding and relief. "The important thing is that you left," she said, squeezing her sister's hand. "I was starting to think we'd have to drag you out of there by force." They talked late into the night. Christina invited her to stay for good. There was plenty of room, and the company would do them both good. Gratefully, Camilla accepted, though she added that as soon as she got back on her feet, she'd find a place of her own. "Tomorrow we'll go straight to my lawyer," Christina declared before bed. "Valentino is a family law specialist. He'll help with the divorce and seek compensation for everything you've been through." Camilla nodded, too exhausted by the day's events to argue. For the first time in a long while, she fell asleep without fear or anxiety, in a clean bed, under the secure roof of a home where she was accepted just as she was. Waking up felt strange. No alarm clock, no Rodrigo's barking, no call from her mother-in-law, only sunlight filtering through the curtains and the smell of freshly brewed coffee. Camilla opened her eyes and for a few seconds didn't know where she was. When she remembered, she exhaled in relief. In the kitchen, Christina was making breakfast, humming to herself. "Morning, runaway." She smiled when she saw her sister. "How was your first night in the new place?" "Amazingly good," Camilla admitted, taking the cup of coffee. "I don't even remember the last time I slept this well." "That's because no one was breathing down your neck and tallying your mistakes," Christina said. "I've been through it too, remember?" Christina had also been married to a difficult man, but her marriage lasted only a year. She'd found the strength to leave long before she lost herself completely. After breakfast, Christina took out her laptop and opened a job search page. "Let's see what's out there for a professional plumber," she suggested. "I'm sure, with your experience, it'll be fine." Camilla shook her head doubtfully. "I haven't worked in 3 years, Christina. I'm afraid my skills are gone." "Nonsense," her sister waved it off. "It's like riding a bike. Once you learn, you don't forget. Besides, yesterday you proved brilliantly that your skills are intact." Camilla couldn't help smiling, remembering her mother-in-law's face when she saw the flood. They found several openings nearby. 2 large management companies were looking for plumbers, and there was also an ad from a private contractor recruiting a team to service cottage communities. "Call Hydrotechnic first," Christina advised. "They've got a good reputation, and their office is close." To Camilla's surprise, the company showed great interest in her candidacy. After a short phone call, she was scheduled for an interview the next day. "See?" Christina said triumphantly. "And you were scared." They spent the rest of the day on legal matters. The lawyer, Valentino, a serious, middle-aged man with a keen gaze, listened closely to Camilla's story, asked a few clarifying questions, and began drafting the divorce petition. In this situation, we clearly have signs of domestic violence, he said, making notes. That will work in your favor. Do you have evidence? Photos of bruises, medical records, witness statements? Camilla pulled out her phone and showed several photos she had secretly taken after particularly violent fights. She also had saved messages to friends where she had complained about her husband's aggression. Excellent, the lawyer nodded. That's a start. Now, as to property, the apartment belongs to your husband, right? Purchased before the marriage? Yes, he bought it a year before we met, Camilla confirmed. Then you can't claim it, Valentino mused. However, we can seek compensation for emotional damages and for the fact that you were prevented from working all these years. That's called lost earnings. By day's end, the divorce petition was drafted and ready to file. The lawyer promised to submit it first thing in the morning and assured her that, should her ex-husband threaten her, she could contact him or the police immediately. By the way, about the police, he added as they were leaving, you should file a report of domestic violence. Even if it doesn't go to court, the very fact of filing will be recorded, which may be useful in the future. When the lawyer left, Camilla felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. The first step had been taken. There was no way back. She turned on her phone and found 27 missed calls from Rodrigo and 15 from her mother-in-law, along with dozens of messages filled with threats, pleas, and accusations. Don't respond, Christina advised, peeking over her sister's shoulder. Let all communication go through the lawyer. It's safer that way. Camilla nodded in agreement and deleted all the messages without reading them. She saved only one, from a friend who wrote that Rodrigo had called her looking for his wife. She knew about the flood and was worried about Camilla. I'm fine. I'm starting a new life, Camilla replied briefly. The next morning began with an interview at Hydrotechnic. Camilla was as nervous as if it were a first date. She smoothed the only shirt she'd managed to grab when she left Rodrigo, braided her hair neatly, and even put on light makeup. You look great, Christina encouraged her, confident and professional. The management company's office was in a small two-story building on the edge of town. Camilla went up to the second floor, where HR was located, and introduced herself to the secretary. A few minutes later, she was invited into the office of the technical director, Javier Orellana, a stocky man of about 50 with a graying beard and attentive eyes. Alvarez, Camilla. He stood up from behind the desk and offered his hand. Come in. Have a seat. Let's take a look at your resume. Camilla handed over a folder with documents, including a copy of her diploma and a letter of recommendation from her former boss, which she had somehow managed to keep all these years. So, 4 years at Aqua Service? Orellana murmured as he scanned the papers. Excellent references, but then a 3-year gap. Why weren't you working? Camilla hesitated for a second, unsure whether to tell the truth. Family circumstances, she said at last. My husband insisted I quit. I'm in the process of divorcing now and want to return to my profession. Javier nodded understandingly. It happens, he said without judgment. But you haven't lost your skills in the meantime. I hope not, Camilla smiled. Good. Orellana jotted something in a notebook. We've just had an opening in the emergency crew. Shift schedule, 2 days on, 2 off, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Pay is base salary plus bonuses for difficult calls. Trial period, 1 month. Can you handle it? More than handle it, Camilla answered confidently. Then fill out the paperwork and you can start as soon as tomorrow, he said, handing her a stack of forms. We provide uniforms and tools. As for a partner, the whole crew's men. Will that be a problem? Camilla laughed. Believe me, Javier, I've never had problems with men, at least not in the professional sense. On the way home, Camilla could barely keep from jumping for joy. She had a job again, her own income, independence, the chance to do what she loved and knew how to do. At home, a call from the lawyer brought good news. The divorce petition had been accepted for consideration, and the first hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Does Rodrigo already know? Camilla asked. Not yet, Valentino replied. He'll receive notices in the next few days. Be prepared for him to try to contact you directly. I'm ready, Camilla said firmly. I'm not afraid of him anymore. After speaking with the lawyer, she dialed Isabella's number. Camilla, her friend exclaimed with relief. I was so worried. Was there really a flood at your place? Yes, a little emergency, Camilla replied evasively. Listen, are you still at Aqua Service? Is Bernardo still the boss? Of course, he'll only leave that office feet first. Isabella laughed. Why? I'd like to visit him, Camilla said, to thank him for believing in me back then. They agreed to meet the next evening at the Aqua Service office. Camilla felt the need to close that chapter, to thank the person who had given her a start in the profession, and to say goodbye to the place where her adult life had begun. The first day at her new job passed in a blur. Camilla was nervous, afraid that 3 years off had truly dulled her skills, but her hands remembered everything they needed to. Her partner was assigned as Carlos, a veteran plumber with 40 years experience, who at first treated her with suspicion, but after their very first call, a tricky sewer stack blockage, acknowledged her skill. Not bad for a girl, he grumbled, though respect shone in his eyes. I figured I'd have to teach you everything. My father taught me, Camilla said, wiping her hands with a rag. And he, like you, was an old-school plumber. By the end of the shift, they were working like a well-oiled machine. With his experience, Carlos quickly diagnosed faults, and Camilla's deft hands handled repairs in the tightest spaces. After work, Camilla went to Aqua Service, where Isabella was already waiting, just as energetic and cheerful as ever, now with a new haircut and trendy glasses. Camilla! She rushed to hug her friend. Finally! 3 years without a peep, only bits of news through mutual acquaintances. They went up to Bernardo's office, a burly man with a luxuriant mustache and kind eyes. Seeing Camilla, he broke into a smile and came around the desk to hug her. Alvarez, I don't believe my eyes. It's been so long. You look better than ever, despite all... He trailed off, unsure how to delicately mention her marital troubles. Rumors about the flood in Rodrigo's apartment and Camilla's divorce had already spread through the district. Thank you, Bernardo, Camilla smiled. I came to thank you for everything you did for me. If not for you and your faith in me, I'd never have become a professional. They talked for a long time about work, former colleagues, and new technologies in plumbing. Bernardo proudly showed photos of his grandchildren, and Camilla told him about her new job at Hydrotechnic. And that husband of yours? The boss asked cautiously toward the end. He's not bothering you? Camilla shook her head. Not yet, but I'm ready for anything. I won't let myself be cornered again. Good. Bernardo nodded approvingly. And listen, if anything, come to me. I know people in all sorts of places. I'll help however I can. The offer moved Camilla deeply. All these years, people had remembered her, worried about her, and were ready now to support her in a tough moment. After meeting her former boss, she and Isabella stopped by a small cafe nearby, where over tea, Camilla finally told her friend the whole truth about her marriage and her dramatic escape. My God, Camilla! Isabella looked at her with horror and admiration at once. I had no idea it was that bad, but you did the right thing getting out. And you know what? She smiled slyly. We have a new chief engineer at Aqua Service. Damien, 37, divorced, no kids, and he asked about you when he saw your photo on the Wall of Honor. Isabella, Camilla laughed. I just got out of one relationship. I need to sort myself out first. I'm not saying right now, her friend shrugged. Just keep in mind, decent men exist, and they'll appreciate a woman like you. On her way home, Camilla thought about her friend's words. Of course, she wasn't ready to even think about a new relationship now, but someday, maybe after the wounds had healed, after she'd fully found her footing, after she'd learned to trust again. Rodrigo received the divorce notice 3 days after the petition was filed. His reaction was immediate. He began calling Camilla every hour, and when she didn't answer, he sent dozens of messages. First came threats and curses, then pleas for forgiveness, promises to change, declarations of love. When that didn't work, he turned to blackmail. If you don't come back, I'll tell everyone what you really are, that you caused the flood on purpose, that you're mentally unstable, he wrote. Camilla showed the messages to the lawyer, who only shook his head. This plays right into our hands, and he said. Threats and blackmail are additional evidence of psychological abuse. Save everything he writes, but don't respond. Conchita didn't stay out of it either. She started calling Cristina, trying to find out where Camilla was hiding. Give my son his wife back. she shouted into the phone. She's his lawful spouse and must be by her husband's side. You know what, Conchita? Christina replied calmly. The days of serfdom are long over. No one owes anyone anything, especially in an abusive relationship. And if you don't stop these calls, I'll report you to the police for telephone harassment. After that, the mother-in-law switched to blasting out angry messages, which Camilla also passed along to the lawyer to add to the file. Meanwhile, life was gradually settling down. Camilla got into the rhythm at work, got to know her colleagues, and even started setting money aside for a place of her own. On weekends, she and Christina went to the movies or out into nature, doing all the things Camilla had dreamed of during her marriage but couldn't because of her husband's control. 2 days before the first court hearing, Rodrigo showed up at Christina's house. He was standing at the gate when Camilla returned from work, gaunt, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes. "Camilla," he called hoarsely, "we need to talk." Camilla stopped a few meters away, gripping her tool bag tighter. If necessary, she could use it as a weapon. "We have nothing to talk about, Rodrigo," she said firmly. "All communication goes through the lawyers. Please." He took a step toward her, then stopped when he saw her tense. "I just want to apologize. I was a monster. I didn't understand what I was doing." "You understood perfectly well," Camilla countered, feeling anger rise inside her. "Every time you raised your hand against me, every time you humiliated me in front of your mother, every time you forbade me to work, you knew exactly what you were doing." "I've changed," he went on, taking another cautious step. "After that night, after the flood, I rethought a lot. I even fought with my mother. I don't let her interfere in my life anymore." Camilla smiled bitterly. "And how long will this new life last? A week? A month? Until the next stressful situation at work? I swear I'll never again." "Don't," Camilla cut him off. "I've heard those oaths dozens of times. After every time you hit me, I don't believe them anymore." She resolutely walked past him toward the gate. Rodrigo didn't try to stop her. He only looked at her with despair in his eyes. "I love you," he said to her back. "I've always loved you." Camilla turned and looked him straight in the eyes. "That's not love, Rodrigo. It's obsession, control, possessiveness, but not love. Real love doesn't hurt." With that, she went into the yard and closed the gate behind her. Her heart was pounding, her hands were trembling, but she felt incredible relief. For the first time, she had said everything she thought, without fear and without worrying about the consequences. Christina met her at the door. She had been watching through the window, ready to call the police at any moment. "Are you okay?" she asked, hugging her sister. "Yes," Camilla answered. And for the first time in a long while, it was the plain truth. The divorce hearing went surprisingly smoothly. Rodrigo did not contest any part of Camilla's petition. He agreed to all the terms and even offered compensation, a substantial sum in the thousands of dollars that would help her start a new life. Camilla remained on guard. Such compliance didn't fit his character, but after reviewing all the documents, the lawyer reassured her that there was no catch. "It seems he really has recognized his guilt and wants to make amends at least materially," Valentino said. "Or he simply doesn't want a protracted court battle that could harm his reputation." Be that as it may, a month later, Camilla officially became a free woman. She received the divorce papers the same day she was offered a permanent contract at Hydrotechnic. The trial period was over, and management was pleased with her work. The compensation from Rodrigo allowed her to make a down payment on a small but cozy one-room apartment in a new neighborhood, and Christina helped with the renovation. 6 months later, Camilla stood in her new apartment, admiring the freshly hung curtains. The little studio on the 3rd floor of a new development was gradually becoming a real home. Simple but sturdy furniture, light-colored walls, a few potted plants on the windowsill. Everything here had been chosen by her, for herself, without deference to anyone else's tastes or preferences. "Beautiful!" Christina, sitting on the couch with a cup of tea, nodded in approval. "The final touch, and the place is perfect." Camilla smiled, straightening a fold in the new curtain. "You know, sometimes I wake up and can't believe this is really mine. That I can come home from work and turn on the music I like without fearing someone won't approve. That I can invite my friends over without asking permission." Christina looked at her sister with pride. You've earned this, Camilla. Everything you have now, you earned with your own hands and your courage. Camilla had indeed achieved a lot in 6 months. Hydrotechnic promoted her to forewoman of the emergency crew after she brilliantly handled a major heating system failure in an entire residential complex. Her salary increased, allowing her to pay off the mortgage faster. Most importantly, her self-confidence returned, the very confidence Rodrigo and his mother had methodically destroyed over 3 years of marriage. By the way, have you heard anything about him? Christina asked gently, setting down her cup. Camilla shook her head. Nothing since the divorce. They say he moved to another city. His mother, too, apparently. Their apartment is for sale. I saw the listing online. How do you feel about that? Camilla thought for a moment, gazing out at the evening city lights. I don't. Truly, I don't. I thought I'd be angry, hate him, fear running into him on the street. But inside there's only emptiness, as if everything connected with him had been cut away and carried off by the wind. Christina nodded in understanding. Then you're truly free. That's good. A doorbell interrupted their conversation. Camilla opened it. Carlos, her partner in the emergency crew, stood on the threshold holding a small box. Hey, boss, he greeted her cheerfully, handing over the box. It's not a housewarming without a gift. Got you something for the home. Camilla accepted the present with a smile, a set of high-quality professional tools. Carlos, thank you. This is exactly what I was missing. You don't say, Carlos snorted. I saw what you used last time to tighten the bathroom faucet. A kitchen towel and pliers. A disgrace for a plumber. Camilla laughed and invited him in. Over their time working together, she and Carlos had become true friends, not just colleagues. The veteran plumber treated her with fatherly care, shared the finer points of the trade, and shielded her from the occasional sexist jab from some clients. Carlos stepped inside, greeted Christina, and gave an approving nod after looking around. Nice little nest you've feathered. And the plumbing's solid. I checked when I helped you install the shower cabin. 15 years without a major repair. Easy. They settled in the kitchen, where Camilla poured tea and set out a cake. The real housewarming was planned for the weekend, with all the friends and coworkers, but this impromptu tea felt like a pleasant start. By the way, Carlos took a sip, Javier asked me to tell you your promotion's approved. On the 1st, you're officially senior emergency engineer. Camilla gasped, hardly believing her ears. Seriously? But I've only been with the company 6 months. What's it matter how long you've been there? Carlos shrugged. It's how you work that counts. And you work better than many old-timers. Take it from me. I may grumble at you, but I told Orellana myself they wouldn't find a better candidate, especially now that you've enrolled in the Polytechnic part-time. Carlos, Camilla said, moved. Thank you. Ah, come on, you earned it, the old plumber said, embarrassed. Just don't let that boss's chair go to your head. Don't forget who taught you everything. How could I forget? Camilla smiled. You remind me every day. They sat in the kitchen late into the evening, discussing work, future plans, and the latest city news. When Carlos left, Christina stood to go home as well. He's a good man, she said, hugging her sister goodbye. And you've got a great team. I'm glad it all worked out this way. Me too, Camilla replied sincerely. Left alone, she sat on the couch in the dim light for a long time, sifting through the events of recent months. Her life had changed beyond recognition, and not just because of the new apartment or the promotion. The real achievement was regaining control over her own life, finding inner freedom and confidence. A phone call woke Camilla early on Saturday morning. She sleepily reached for the nightstand and glanced at the screen. An unknown number. Hello? She croaked. Camilla? Came an unfamiliar woman's voice. Sorry to call so early. I'm Lucia, Conchita's neighbor. Your former mother-in-law is in the hospital, and yours was the only number I could find in her address book. Camilla sat up, fully awake. My mother-in-law in the hospital? And my number in her book? What happened? A heart attack, the neighbor replied. She was home alone. Good thing she managed to call an ambulance. She's in intensive care now. And her son, Rodrigo? Have you called him? I can't reach him. They say he's on a business trip somewhere. His phone's been out of range for 3 days. Camilla thought for a moment. On the one hand, Conchita was the last person she wanted to worry about. On the other, despite all the humiliations the woman had inflicted, ignoring the situation was not in Camilla's nature. "Which hospital is she in?" she asked at last. "The Central Hospital, cardiology ward," the neighbor answered with relief. "Will you come?" "I'd visit myself, but I'm leaving today to see my daughter in another city." "Yes, I'll come," Camilla decided. "Thank you for letting me know." An hour later, Camilla walked into the hospital building, clutching a small bag with fruit and mineral water. She herself didn't know why she'd come. Perhaps to make sure Conchita was all right, or perhaps to close that chapter of her life for good. The nurse on duty said the patient had been transferred from intensive care to a regular room and was in stable condition. Camilla went up to the third floor, and after hesitating at the door marked 317, knocked softly. "Come in," came a weak voice. Conchita lay in bed, hooked to a heart monitor. She looked noticeably thinner and more drawn, with deep shadows under her eyes. When she saw Camilla, her eyes widened in surprise. "You," she whispered. "Why are you here?" "Your neighbor called," Camilla answered calmly, approaching the bed. "She said she couldn't reach Rodrigo. How are you feeling?" Conchita turned to the wall. "Terrible," she grumbled. "The doctors say I almost died, and my son doesn't care. He left and even turned off his phone." Camilla set the bag on the bedside table. "I brought fruit and water. Is there anything else I can do?" The former mother-in-law glanced at her suspiciously, as if expecting a catch. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "After everything that happened." "I don't know," Camilla answered honestly. "Maybe I just want to be better than you think I am." The words seemed to touch something in Conchita. Her lips trembled, and she looked less like a formidable mother-in-law and more like an elderly, ill woman. "You know," she said unexpectedly, "he never got over your divorce. Started drinking, trouble at work. Says his life is over." Camilla sighed and sat on the edge of the bed. "Conchita, we were unhappy together. I couldn't stay just because he felt bad without me." "I understand," the older woman admitted suddenly. "I myself was married to the same kind of tyrant. Rodrigo takes after his father. I only realized it too late." She fell silent, fiddling with the edge of the blanket. "Back then I should have stopped turning him against you and taken him to a psychologist. Maybe things would have turned out differently." Camilla could hardly believe her ears. Was this authoritative, perpetually dissatisfied woman actually admitting her mistakes? "I'm glad you're feeling better," she said, standing up. "If you need help with medicine or groceries until Rodrigo gets back, call me. You have my number." Conchita nodded and something like gratitude flickered in her eyes. "You're a good girl," she said quietly. "It's a pity Rodrigo and I didn't appreciate that." Leaving the hospital, Camilla took a deep breath of fresh spring air. She felt strangely calm. The conversation with her former mother-in-law brought neither reconciliation nor forgiveness, but it put an important full stop on the story of her marriage. On Sunday evening, Camilla threw a proper housewarming party. The small apartment filled with guests, Christina and her husband, colleagues from Hydrotechnic, former co-workers from Aquaservice, including Bernardo, who arrived with a huge bouquet of roses and a bottle of good whiskey. "To you, Alvarez," he toasted when everyone had found their seats at the festive table, "to proving that a true professional isn't about gender or age, but about character and perseverance." Everyone clinked glasses in agreement. Camilla looked around at the guests with warmth in her heart. Each of these people had played a part in her return to a normal life. Some offered moral support, some helped with work, some were simply there when a friendly shoulder was needed. "I'd like to propose a toast," she said, raising her glass, "to the freedom to be yourself, to the right to choose your own path, and to each of you who helped me reclaim that freedom." After dinner, when everyone moved to the living room and broke into small conversation groups, Osvaldo, the new chief engineer at Aquaservice, whom Isabella had mentioned 6 months earlier, came over to Camilla. "Great apartment," he said with interest, eyeing the professionally installed bathroom fixtures. "And the renovation's solid. Did you do it yourself?" "With help from friends," Camilla smiled. "I did the plumbing, of course. Carlos helped with the electrical. He's better at that than I am. Bernardo's told me a lot about you, Osvaldo smiled. Says you're the best plumber in the city. He's exaggerating, Camilla said, embarrassed. Though, yes, I manage pretty well. They got to talking and discovered many common interests beyond work. Listen, Osvaldo said suddenly as the evening was drawing to a close. Next weekend, I'm planning a little trip to the lake. It's a close-knit group, all good people. Want to come along? Camilla hesitated for a moment. The invitation clearly went beyond simple, collegial friendship. After everything she had been through, should she agree so soon to something that might lead to a new relationship? But then she remembered her friend's words. Good men exist too. And her own words to Rodrigo, real love doesn't hurt. Maybe she should give herself a chance to find out what healthy relationships look like. I'd love to, she smiled. But fair warning, I sing terribly around the campfire, though I make excellent porridge on a camping trip. Osvaldo laughed, and in his eyes Camilla saw something she had never once seen in her ex-husband's gaze. Genuine respect. Her relationship with Osvaldo developed slowly and harmoniously. They didn't rush to move in together or marry. Instead, they enjoyed each day, valuing each other's independence. For the first time in her life, Camilla was in a relationship where no one tried to control or change her, where her opinion mattered and where her boundaries were respected. Occasionally, messages came from her former mother-in-law, measured, almost formal, but without the old hostility. Conchita would share updates about her health, sometimes ask how Camilla was doing. She rarely mentioned Rodrigo, but from those sparse references, Camilla learned that her ex-husband had moved to another city, undergone therapy, and apparently started a new life. This information stirred no emotion in her, no gloating, no regret. That chapter of her life was firmly closed and all its lessons learned. Her phone buzzed, a message from Osvaldo. I love you. See you in the morning. Camilla smiled and typed back, I love you too. At that moment, she realized she was truly happy at last. Not because there was a man by her side, but because there was a person who valued her exactly as she was. Strong, independent, incapable of fixing anything that broke in this world, even her own life.